Hello and welcome to the Pinstripe Post. My name is Ryan Sampson. Today is Monday, August 12th, but he is the star of the show, Joel Sherman. Joel, how you doing, man?
Good, Ryan. How about you?
I'm good, man. I was at the Yankee game yesterday. What a nail biter at the end. Long game, but the Yankees do end up winning a series versus the Rangers after losing the series against the Angels since the last time we spoke. So I want to start there with first pitch, what we saw in this Rangers series and Angels series. Joel, I think the bigger question ultimately for this team is in post 2 weeks from the deadline and when the moves they made and didn't make, how it's affected this team thus far and what you've seen. That is the preliminary question I wanted to ask you before we dive a little bit deeper into this Rangers series.
Yeah, the answer I think is a big question, though, Ryan, on and something I talk a lot about, and I appreciate this is a Yankee podcast, but they exist in obviously an ecosystem of 30 teams. And if you look this morning, we're doing this on Monday morning at the end of the weekend, there are 5 teams with exactly 49 losses, with the best, the Yankees and Baltimore have the best record at 70 and 49, and then you have 3 teams, Dodgers, Cleveland, and Philly at 16-49, and then Milwaukee just beyond it. There's kind of a jam for that NL wild card. There's also a jam for the best record in the sport, and I think it's a sign of where we are in the sport. For whatever reason, no team is on pace to play better than 600 ball. It would be the first time since 2013 that's happened. So when I know, again, we're a Yankee podcast and Yankee fans are listening to this and they're watching their team and saying, look at all the imperfections.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just saying the Phillies a month ago felt like they were going to win 110. Now they're lucky that Atlanta can't get out of their way. The Mets are kind of like struggling. Like the Phillies aren't going to get caught, not because of the Phillies, but because of the rest of the division. The Dodgers did all this stuff in the offseason. Ohtani, Yamamoto, Glasnow, Teoscar Hernandez. They're a half game behind the Yankees because their pitching is so messed up. Yeah, Baltimore. Like, how would Baltimore ever lose? Look at that lineup every day. And I just think there's probably a variety of reasons. I encourage people to go to Post Plus tomorrow morning. I think I'm going to weigh in on a couple of reasons why I think this is happening. But it's a long way of saying, Ryan, that I think a key for all of these teams is we're defective in some way. So how do we keep our strengths, and at least try to fix some blemishes down the stretch? And what I wrote in the regular post today was, the Yankees had a problem for most of this season, that it was Judge and Soto, and they couldn't find a way to score if they weren't involved. Now, Judge and Soto haven't stopped. But the lineup has gotten longer. Now, is that a blip? The Met lineup was dominant for a while. Then it faces good Seattle pitching. A reminder, Yankees might hit Seattle in a best of 3. And suddenly, you're looking at Logan Gilbert, George Kirby, and Luis Castillo, and you're like, they're going to shut people down. So, but their lineup has gotten longer. And I think one of the key things, two key things is the guy behind Judge is they're not going to stop walking Judge, no matter how hot the number 4 hitter is, because Judge is having a better offensive season than he had when he hit 62 homers.
Damn straight.
It's essentially like he decided to stop making outs in May, and that's where we are. So against righty pitching, Austin Wells has stepped in and he's performed really well. Stanton has come off the injured list, and when an opponent starts a lefty, and we know the Yankees have had lots of problems against lefties, Stanton has to deliver like he did yesterday. And by the way, it was a tough spot for Stanton, right? Because then they bring in really a late inning reliever in Leclerc, who holds righties to under a 200 batting average, gets ahead of Stanton 0-2. Stanton does a good job taking 2 borderline pitches. They were balls, but they were, inner half. And then selling out on a breaking ball and doing what he could still do better than just about anyone else is hit the ball hard, and made the Rangers pay for an intentional walk of Judge with 2 outs by hitting the key blow of the game, which was a 3-run homer to make the score 5-0. And I just think the Yankees feel like they're solving a problem there. Like, how many can they solve? Stroman threw 5 innings and gave up 1 run yesterday, but there were still 3 walks and 1 strikeout.
Yes.
And, he got a key out on a hard hit ball that should have been a double by Seager, a good play by Soto, and really athletic play by Volpe
Great play.
in the first inning. The defense played bad late, but played well early for Stroman. And Stroman, as you know, is going to need defense. The ball is in play. So Stroman was a little better because
Yes.
the ball was on the ground a lot more, which is key for him. How much better can they get him? Can they get Clark Schmidt healthy to help in some even hybrid way the rest of the way and for the playoffs? Can they get Trevino healthy? Because because it started way back when, I really like Austin Wells, even when he wasn't. But they're bordering on overplaying him at this point because they clearly don't want to play Narvaez.
Right.
Now, I assume Narvaez will play a little against the White Sox because it's the White Sox. But I think they want to, get Trevino back because he's a real major leaguer. And right now, Carlos Narvaez isn't. Can they get them back? Can they get this bullpen in something that feels like order to feel somewhat comfortable going into the postseason? That one I'm not sure about. But by the way, whatever the Oriole webcast is talking about 4 things they have to fix, and whatever the Dodger one is talking about the 5 they have to fix. And so I just think there's no great team. There's a couple of very good teams, and they've all gone through these long kind of like looking like the White Sox, where you're like, is this team ever going to win again? And I just wanted to tell Yankee fans, it's not just your team this year. There is nobody sprinting.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Joel, but that there's a bigger picture here. And it's something that I even turned to my friend who I went to the game with yesterday, and I said, there is no team running away with this right now in baseball. I mean, the fact that the Orioles have not sprinted away with this division is miraculous when you really look at how poorly the Yankees did play in the previous month. But to your point, the lineup seems longer now. And in that key spot, and I think that's something that you really hit on there that's good, Giancarlo Stanton knew that moment was big. Like, this is a big moment here. Bases, I got men on base. They walk Judge to get to me. They're trying to get me out here in this situation. And he hits an absolute piss missile to the left field. I mean, that thing was insane that he went down and made that ball was out in a blink. So I think that's something that, we talk about here, Joel, is that they did go get a guy like Jazz Chisholm, right? And then you hit on it great. And that's something that we should talk about is defense looked great early. He got tested early. But then we got to that situation where it was 2 straight ground balls. It was Chisholm going to his left, cuts in front of Volpe. And then you got Gleyber Torres later in the inning cutting in front of Volpe again. What the hell is going on in there? I don't understand how Volpe, who's the shortstop, isn't communicating to those guys, hey, I got this. This is let me make the play. I'm a Gold Glover. I don't understand how situations like that can still happen.
Yeah, well, one of the areas I think the Yankees have to keep working on is playing baseball better. Again, a common theme of this podcast. And I think what makes now having seen Chisholm play a lot, there is that Gleyber Torres, Robbie Cano element to him, which is what makes him good. There's a certain non-rush, cool, whatever. When it goes badly, it looks terrible, right? And look, he's a guy, he watches the home runs. One of these is going to hit the wall, right? We know it. And it's just life, Verdugo, he's had a couple hit the wall when he's done that. Obviously, Gleyber, it was a story last week, hit the wall on it. And it's part of the kind of portfolio that comes with it. I was at all 3 games. I covered all 3 games over the weekend, the doubleheader and the game yesterday on Sunday. And in game 1 of the doubleheader, Gleyber Torres knocks in the first run of the game, opposite field 2-run single. And so you're like, oh, nice thing. But he isn't aware. He should have been on second base. Now, again, I don't know if you were there. I don't know if the broadcast is talking about it. I'm watching the game, and I'm like, here's 2 things. Austin Wells is the runner. So you, as the trail runner there, you want to make sure, if you could get a cutoff, because it's short right field in Yankee Stadium, get a cutoff, and if you have to sacrifice an out there, fine, make sure Wells scores the run. So you should be going anyway. But the other thing is, if there's any kind of advance work, and I did ask, there was advance work, Adalis Garcia is a hero ball player. He's not going to hit a cutoff guy. He's like Harrison Bader. He's like Yoenis Cespedes. They're going to hero ball it. They're going to try to get a runner at home. So that's an easy 90 feet that you don't take. Top of the second inning, pop up to Ben Rice. Gleyber Torres runs into Ben Rice. By the way, runner on first, running on a pitch. There's a dart up the middle. Gleyber isn't watching the bat. He's just going to cover second base. The ball goes to, like, if he stops, it's a tough play because it was a skittering, hard hit balls. But like, he wasn't aware the ball was coming. And so within 2 innings in a game where he drove in the first run of the game, I'm like, if you were playing the plus minus game with Gleyber Torres, what would the plus minus be?
He'd be a net zero right there, right? 2 negatives with the 1 positive.
Or 3 negatives, right? Because
he
bumped it. Like, it didn't cost him because Rice catches the ball. But like, and by the way, again, it feels like a picking on Gleyber's situation, who I do think Gleyber is the worst at it. And I actually think Gleyber is not a resistant player. I think he wants to play, I don't think he's indifferent. I wonder about his ability to concentrate through it all and apply it in real time. And we know that these 90 feet, they always matter. And then think about against Seattle. You're in a best of 3. How many runs are you going to score in a series? So every 90 that you could get on offense or prevent on defense, you've got to do that. To maximize it. And so, again, these 40-ish games that are left, that's part of the improvement stack, which is like, you got to get the attention of the Verdugos and the Chisholms and the, like a guy like Chisholm, he hasn't played a ton of important games. Like, man, I understand how you have to play well. Can we find some happy medium between you playing well because you play with a certain calm in your game, with, hey, when the ball goes up, run, and when it's over the fence, crawl around it, hop, whatever. And look, I think there's a court awareness thing also, a sense of the moment. In general, I don't care about anything a guy does once he hits the ball over the fence. You want to throw the bat, you want to run 30 seconds around the bases. But if you're losing 9-3, I might not Euro step at home plate.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, that was one thing I thought was interesting with Jazz. And also you hear the stat about, offensively 7 home runs in his first 12 games, something that hasn't been done. Like that's impressive stuff. But to your point, I mean,
who he reminds me of a little bit?
Yeah.
It's not perfect because he's lefty, the guy, but kind of like the body build, you don't look at him and say how easy the power is. Alfonso Soriano was like that. He was lean muscle guy, and you just like, it was so whippy how he hit the ball, and the ball just on Chisholm. Like, it's easy power. I mean, he is a talented player. And you want to find that happy medium where you get that all out, because watching him play every day, you see the speed, it's easy speed. And his stolen bases have been helpful to a team that wasn't running a lot. He is actually good at third base. He's messed up some more subtle things, the tag play over the force play the other day. Yesterday, that kind of collide, like with him and Volpe, who's got it. So we also have to appreciate he's still new at this position, and he's working through it. But there is a load of talent there, and can Boone, Judge, whoever, infield coaches, etc., fully maximize that player who hasn't played in a ton of big games.
Yeah, I mean, that's the key, right? And I think him being effective and as talented as he is can really help, to your point, lengthen the lineup and make them a force on that mid to the bottom of the order. But that's going to bring me to my next point, which is of course.
But what always worries me about it is, in whatever we would call, like, say, the Boone era, it isn't like the stuff ever fully gets cleaned up. I mean, what was it like Josh Donaldson led the major leagues in looking at balls that didn't go over the fence, right?
Yeah.
And it didn't get, you and this has gone on with Glaber for several years, not just this year. And Bader airmailed a lot of throws from the and so I'm not sure that there's a track record of not completely cleaning it up and then having a price paid in the biggest games. And I think it needs to be cleaned up better, because I think the Yankees are right there talent wise,
Right.
especially if Saturday was a step forward for Cole, who went from, I think, two swinging strikeouts the previous game to suddenly I think he had 26 swings and misses in this game, and he really got better as it went along. And you know what they're trying to get to with Cole, which is he's the unicorn in the game because he has endurance and he has excellence and a high pitching IQ. And when he put it all together, we saw the Cy Young Award last year. He hasn't been able to meld, especially like endurance, getting like seventh inning. And we've seen these pockets of where he's been something that looks like Garrett Cole. And I asked him actually the other day after the game, is there time to be Garrett Cole again? And he, of course, as I thought he would, was yes. And I think as we start making that list, what's important over the last 40 games, over the last month and a half, rediscovering Garrett Cole, he's getting the ball, unless he pitches game 161 or 162 because they need it to either win the division or just get into the playoffs. Right. Cole's getting the ball in game one because he's Garrett Cole. I mean, he could lose the rest of the games. He's going to get the ball. The question becomes, and another question the last few weeks, who's getting it in game two? Is it Hill? Is it Rodon? Who is it? Is it Clark Schmidt if he comes back? So I put pretty high up on the list, Ryan, rediscovering Garrett Cole, because, again, start playing that, hey, it's a best of three against Seattle, and they're opening with, George Kirby. Well, you better have a guy who doesn't give up a lot of runs.
Yeah.
Going against him and can give you some length and stay out of your bullpen.
No, I agree, Joel. I think that's definitely high up on the list for them. And to your point, Saturday, Cole had quite the outing. You hope that he can continue, and the consistency is something that he's been lacking this year. And I think if we can keep, I'm not saying 10 strikeouts every game, but like to your point, if he can keep getting that swing and miss and get better as the game goes on, it's a better situation for the Yankees. But I wanted to get to do up because there's three things that I wanted to see how you'd rank them from most to least concerning. So the first thing I was going to ask you about is the Yankee struggles at home. It's not been pretty of late at home. We know what their record is at home right now. It's 32-27 at home, but it's not been great of late.
They've only won, I think it's 2 of the last 8 or 9 series at home. And look, this was a homestand. They won the homestand at 5-4, but it was 3 losing teams. They lost a series to the Angels, like the Mets did, by the way. And the Angels are not good.
No.
Like, forget about a sweep, but this should have felt like 2-1, 2-1, 2-1, where it's a 6-3 homestand. Now, I know, are we quibbling? It's 5-4, but they just. I'm sorry, I cut off your thought.
No, you're okay. So that's one thing. The second thing I wanted to ask you about was the Yankees struggles versus lefties, hitting 235 an average versus lefties, 331 on base with a 717 on base plus slugging, and then the struggles versus the AL East. They're 22-23. They're a game under 500 against their own division. So of those three things, how would you rank them from most concerning to least concerning for this Yankee squad?
So, I wrote in the Sunday paper, the Sunday Post, about 2 of those, which was they're not winning in their division and they're not winning at home. So, use the division as an example. It's been 10 years since the team without the best record within the division won the division. So they'd be breaking that. When they've won the division, I think, again, forgive me, it's not in front of me. It's not fresh. I wrote it a few days ago. I think 7 of the last 8 times they've had the best record in the division, they've won the division. So there's that. And at home, what confuses me at home, Ryan, is for so many years, they had lost lefty-righty balance. And this year, they've gotten lefty balance back in the lineup, including Soto, who's just a brilliant hitter, and Austin Wells, who's really grown, and like of late Chisholm, and they've had Verdugo all year, and Ben Rice has given them a little something. And it's the house that Ruth built, and it's got a short right field porch. And historically, it would scream that you should be really dominant at home by getting the ball over the fence a lot, and that they haven't won at home to that level. Again, you're in the last, since they started making the playoffs regularly in '95, this was their, going into the weekend, was their third worst home record in that period. The two previous worst, they didn't make the playoffs. And it's always over 500. They haven't been under 500 at home since 1991. So they're good this year, but they've been on this 2-month period where they're just not winning series at home. And that's bizarre to their history, and more bizarre because of the strength of the lefties. And where I want to point it out, the combo is they only have 7 games left in the division. They have finished their season series against Tampa Bay and Toronto, who are the 2 worst teams in the division. They've got Baltimore and Boston at home late in the schedule. And it feels like those 7 games are going to really matter when we combine in the division and the Bronx. And can the Yankees get their so much? It feels like this episode is going to be.
Can they get their act together?
Get their act together.
Yeah.
And begin to fix the flaws over the last 7 or so, 8 weeks of the season. Because I think the home thing in particular, because one of the things you're arcing towards clearly is to get home field advantage throughout the playoffs. It's in their sights. They're tied for the best record in the major leagues with Baltimore right now. So it's in their sights to get a bye and play, as the home team through as long as they last in the playoffs, including the World Series, right? Because they are tied for the best record now. And so one of the ways to get it is they have to play better at home.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's been so crazy. And to your point, it's something that I think Yankees fans have always been like, you come into Yankee Stadium, you're losing that series. The Yankees have the team built to hit and have that right field porch and take advantage. But mind you, and that's always been my favorite argument, is like, oh, the Yankees built this bullshit right field. It's like, your team's hitting against in that right field too. That's the same opportunities that you have, that the Yankee team has to hit that ball over the right field wall. So that's besides the point.
But the one that I think is tougher is the stuff against lefties.
Yes,
because Stanton is so key to it. He was doing okay, but not great against lefties this year. And the worry with him is always twofold. When he's good, he's very, very good. And when he's not, he's really not. There's very little middle ground. And the other thing is he's just hurt a lot.
Yeah.
And then you're missing even just the threat of him sitting there. So,
but it was nice to see him hit a couple of balls out this weekend, right?
I mean, and he hit the ball hard all weekend. The only out he made yesterday, he hit 102 miles per hour at somebody. So it has seemed this year, Ryan, that when he's played, he's had his legs a lot more. Like the low points haven't been quite as long.
No.
And he's had his legs. He's had good at bats. And, he's obviously been protecting his legs. He's not running hard on the bases. And still he's had leg injuries. So here we go again. You got 7 weeks in the playoffs. Can you keep the guy upright? Because just as a threat sitting there, Judge is going to be walked. But you want to make it at least some managers sit there and go, Stanton's on it right now. Do I want to pitch to Judge and at least take a shot at it?
And that's the ultimate.
Judge might win the Triple Crown.
I know that if Bobby Witt wasn't hitting 349 right now, he'd be the Triple Crown winner right now, which is crazy to think.
Go look at Bobby Witt's home road splits after this.
You know what? I'm sorry, I don't mean to call you dude, but like I saw that on social media the other day.
And dude by you, man. Special.
But like I saw that on social media the other day, and like people were like, "Go look at his home and away splits," and it's like, okay, interesting.
The whole Royal team, go look.
It's fascinating. It
I don't
really
believe in
is.
conspiracy theories, but interesting.
All right, Joel. So the other thing about the versus the lefties is the inconsistency of the lineups, right? Like, so Boone kind of has to play this game of how am I going to attack this lefty that I'm facing in Andrew Heaney yesterday. So you see, instead of Wells cleaning up, you see Stanton. So we talked about him. The other question about Wells is, and this is something I give Tommy credit for saying, and this is another like theory. Would you toy with the idea because you're playing Austin Wells so much at catcher when Trevino does come back? Do you maybe think about putting Wells at first base? I know he's done it a little bit in the minors and he's done it before. Would you even consider that, considering, Ben Rice hasn't been hitting well against lefties lately? I mean, I know DJ LeMahieu has been hitting well against lefties lately, but how would you like manage that, I guess?
Yeah, I wouldn't mess around with first base. I know people think it's the least important position, except for when you don't have a good first baseman. It always shows up. Uh, and I would also remember Yankee fans might not love it. At some point, probably in the next 3 weeks, Anthony Rizzo is going to show up again. And if he shows up, I assume he's going to be given leash to play to see if they could get something out of him. So he's going to be at first base. The one thing I would do, and this has been a thing for us on this show also, is Stanton doesn't play every day.
Mm-hmm.
When Wells doesn't catch, if there's a righty starter, you can DH Wells, especially because, again, you have Ben Rice around right now. So if you lost the starting catcher, if it was Trevino, you could always put Rice back there, or you could just lose the DH for a few innings by putting Wells back there. And I know that one of the ways that Boone, and I think he's done this well, considering the kind of year Judge is having, has tried to preserve Judge this year, is use him a lot as the DH. So I think he probably prefers on the off days for Stanton that also becomes an off day on the field for Judge. But I don't think there's anything wrong about sneaking Wells's bat in against the righty as the DH every once in a while. Because I also think I think this is right, when Trevino went out, they were exactly 96 games in the season, and both guys had started 48 games at catcher. It was as perfect a 50-50 timeshare as you're going to find in the sport. Well, I don't think that's going to happen anymore. I think it's going to become 60-40 with Wells catching more because he's gained the trust, not just the offense, but the defense. So I think he's going to do it. Plus, I think that in key situations late in the game, either for Trevino or for someone else, he's going to be used as the lefty bat off the bench. Because, again, you have Rice. In other words, if you burn it, if it's for Trevino, he just goes in and catches.
Right.
But say you wanted to have this situation, I'm trying to think who it would even be as a right-hand hitter who you might want to like put him up for. But if you did, you play LeMahieu's in the game.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
And you're like, you know what? We need an extra base hit, maybe a home run here against a righty pitcher. I think Wells becomes your pinch hitter at that point. So I think Wells will bat not as often, but quite a bit more than he did over that first 100-ish games.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be, I think, really interesting to see what happens when Trevino does come back and what that split looks like. I agree. It's going to be Wells more, but it's going to be how much more, right? And because his bat's been so damn good for them in that lineup.
But you don't want to, he said the other day, I'm young, I can handle this, but it is a much heavier workload.
Right.
And I think the catching workload that a single game today is like 1.5 games in the past or something, because of the velocity movement of the pitches, how much you have to retain batter to batter, about game planning to do it, and then go hit. Like I remember watching somebody who could really hit, like Posada or Piazza, up close, and what a burden now. And those guys were catching like 130 games a year, kind of thing. But they didn't deal with pitching staffs like this. Just the number of different pitchers who pitch every day with the different kind of stuff that all explodes. And then having to remember the matched up game plan for each guy with the pitch com. So I think it's a big burden to catch a lot now. And so as much as it's tempting to have his bat in the lineup, even before Trevino comes back, and I think he could be back by next weekend.
Mm-hmm.
I would pull back on Wells a little. You're playing as close to the end as it might be. You're still playing the long game, which is you want your last game to be late October or early November, and you want everybody standing.
Yeah, I would agree to that. I agree to that. I mean, it's tough to see that bat come out of that lineup. All right, but Joel, I want to go to Radio Rational. So the Radio Rational take I have here for you is Clay Holmes. What the fuck happened yesterday, and why did Aaron Boone leave him in that game? I can tell you for a fact it was groans when he came in the game in the 8th inning to get that 4-out save. No one was happy to see him in that game. And then we see the 9th inning absolutely just the man could barely throw a strike. He was trying to pitch around his corners.
But he went 1-2, strikeout to open the inning, right?
He went 1-2 to pit, but then it goes, I mean, dribble after dribbler, right? Defense can't make a play. And then at the same time, we're walking out. I mean, it's the Clay Holmes experience. That's what it is. That's what it is with this guy.
So again, forgive me because it's not sitting in front of me. I'll at least get close to the situation if I don't get it exact, which is, and I think the Yankees have it as bad as anyone because they're so married to the theory. But this is not just a Yankee problem, which is how indifferent to the scoreboard they are on how they pitch, which is Mark Leiter is pitching to Leotis Taveras in the 8th inning. To me, the score, I believe, again, I could be off on this, but I hope I'm right, is 8-4 at that point when he's pitching to Taveras, who's the 8th place hitter in the lineup. For a reason, he's having he's such a like one of the reasons the Rangers have gone from champions to under 500 is the underperformance of Taveras, Adalis Garcia, and Jonah Heim have been extreme. And to me, in that situation, in a late game situation, you have to treat a 2-ball count like it's 3 balls. In other words, don't risk getting to a 3-ball count and actually walking Leotis Taveras. Once it's to 2 balls, you have to say the count right now is 3-1 or 3-2. And I have to throw a strike. We're up. Look at the scoreboard. Your team is up 8-4. Mm-hmm. The way you lose is runners. Make Leotis Taveras, who's hitting 230-ish, hit the ball and get on base. And, but I think the philosophy is swing and miss, swing and miss, swing and miss. Best pitch. And he ends up walking him. And then the 9th place hitter, Carson Kelly, hits a home run. Now it's 8-6. I would argue the same thing in the 9th inning. I'm blanking on who the righty hitter is. Is it Josh Young? Whoever it is with 2 outs. But Nate Lowe is on deck.
Wyatt Langford walks.
So Nate Lowe is on deck, and he's going to be the tying run, and he's left-handed at Yankee Stadium.
And he just hit a home run the previous inning.
To me, when you get to 2 balls against Langford, as good a young hitter as he is, I would say throw the ball underhand. But he can't walk.
No.
Because if you throw it underhand and he hits a homer, it's 8-7. But
he goes sweeper, slider, sweeper, sinker, 4-1, and walks him on 5 pitches.
Right. And so to me, it's like that's the moment where philosophy, catcher, pitcher, pitching coach, it's like you don't have to have him swing and miss. If he hits a home run, he hits a home run. But at least run the risk he hits a line drive at somebody, game over, take a flight to Chicago. Exactly. And those 2 walks, as I'm watching the late innings of the game from the press box yesterday, Ryan, those 2 walks, if I'm the manager, the pitching coach, bother me so much more than the home runs, than the bloop single to center field, because they set up a situation, it feels allergic to the scoreboard.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, you have to marry all the analytical stuff. Great. Like, got it. Once the tying runs on and Lowe's up, you have to start throwing bitch pitches again because you can't afford him to park one 315 feet in that situation. But until then, play the scoreboard and play the spot in the lineup. You're righty on Langford. Taveras is a 230 hitter. hitting 8th for a reason in the middle of a bad year. I mean, I would rather lob it over the plate than walk a guy in that situation.
I mean, it's frustrating to see. Yesterday, even after he walks Langford, he walks low again. But in that low at bat, he gets ahead of him 0-2, and he still works it to literally a 3-2 count, and still is fighting him to foul, and then he eventually walks.
Lowe had a great at bat.
Yeah, he had a great at bat. But to your point,
and
you'd rather
also,
face the righty beforehand and not walk him before you get to Lowe.
Right, and so my philosophy always is there are certain situations where pitchers have to treat 2 balls like it's 3 balls. Like if you get to 2, you have to say, I have to throw a strike now. Don't even risk getting to 3 balls.
Right.
Now those are situations where the scoreboard and the inning and the moment is screaming to you that it's okay that the worst outcome happens. Because to me, it's not really the worst outcome. The worst outcome is walking the guy and beginning to create a merry-go-round that extra pitches on your arm, runners on base, tension in the crowd at home. I mean, it's one of the things you have to deal with if you're a Yankee is that mood you're talking about at Yankee Stadium gets dark quickly, and now you're fighting the other team, your control, and your own fan base. To me, I get it. Nobody's not walking anybody, but it's the pitch selection suggests that you're still trying to miss a bat.
Yes.
Instead of end the game.
Yes. And he's a contact pitcher, which is crazy.
And philosophically, it's where the philosophy gets applied at 100% instead of the philosophy being, this is a good philosophy, but there are times where this isn't a casino where we're playing blackjack, where the cards never change no matter what we do. There's an actual scoreboard here. There's an environment in the game. And I think you have to marry the two things.
Yeah. I mean, and what's also funny about that situation too is Tim Hill's warming up in the bullpen. So
when he didn't come for the lefty, I was surprised.
That's what we were too.
What Boone said afterwards is he warmed him up and then just decided, you know what, Holmes is my closer, and I'm going to ride it.
I'm going to live and die with him.
I'm going to live and die with it. And let's be honest, that's one of those ones where if he brings Tim Hill in and Tim Hill gives it up, people are like, why did you just stick with Holmes?
I would have understood, though. It's the lefty versus lefty. I've seen Clay Holmes literally try and destroy this game.
Yeah, I think that people wait for outcome. But in general, I thought he was going to bring in Hill for the lefty. I thought Holmes was out of gas. Yes. And so I was surprised.
Nearly threw 40 pitches yesterday.
He didn't do it, but he had it. That's one of those ones that feels 55-45, not 90-10. Like you could, would I have brought in Hill? I think so, but it is Tim Hill, not Josh Hader.
Yes.
It's not like I'm I got some blow away.
I know. Yeah, it's not Wandy Peralta coming in.
That's my lefty out in the bullpen, and I'm going with it. So.
Right. It's Tim Hill. It's a fair point. All right, Joel, let's move on to Hoganalytics. Let's bring in Tommy Hogan. He's going to give us some stats. What's up, Tommy?
What's up, guys? Gleyber Torres, too, tripping over his feet on that last ground ball. That got awfully hairy. But I got a quick little nugget on a guy that we haven't mentioned before I get into the meat of Hoganalytics, and that's Nestor Cortez. That final start in the final game against the Angels, he leaves the game. He gets knocked out of the game on a Kevin Pillar single, 0-2 count, 2 outs, bases loaded. It's 2-1, huge pitch. And Kevin Pillar pokes a little single into center field to make it a 4-1 game. I couldn't believe how far outside that pitch was. So I did a little research. It was the second farthest pitch from the center of the plate to go for a single this season. And the farthest one came on the 3rd game of the season where it was a guy squared up to bunt and kept the bunt down for self-defense as the pitch is coming to his chest. So really, it was the farthest pitch from the center of the plate to go for a single, and it knocked Nestor out. It had a lot of people formulating more opinions on how they think of Nestor this season. I get it hasn't been good, but that series as a whole just felt like such a fluke, and it hasn't been a series we've talked about much Joe, I wonder if you feel the same way with that Angels series. It was raining the whole time. You got Will Warren starting a game, and then Nestor gets knocked out, and the Yankees lose on that crazy pitch.
Yeah, it's one of the realities of the sport, which is more than I think all the others, you could be perfect and fail.
Sure.
Again, Giancarlo Stanton could not have hit the ball harder on his out yesterday.
Right.
It went right at a guy. Nestor is making, I don't remember the count or something, either a failed pitch or a waste pitch that shouldn't be hit, and somebody doinks it.
Right.
And
0-2 count.
It's just over 162 games. Like the theory always is, stuff like this evens out. But I think, Tommy, Nestor falls into the bucket of the next 40 games. There's 8-ish starts or 10, 8, whatever there is left. And they need him to be good because he's a real option to start a playoff game, because we've seen him start a playoff game and we know he wouldn't be afraid. He's not going to be afraid. That's not in his portfolio. And to me, part of playing in New York in general and playing in big games in specific starts with who's not afraid of the moment. And I don't think he's afraid of the moment. And at the least, we were talking about Tim Hill. He becomes an important lefty option in the bullpen. Like, he might not like that, but he could have a very vital role as a bullpen multi-inning guy, especially against, like, here comes Jordan Alvarez in the 7th inning. Would you rather Nestor Cortez or Tim Hill go after him? Kind of situation. And so they have to. He was really good early, and he was specifically very good at home. And he has been part of a Yankee problem since about mid-June, which is the homeritis of the pitching staff. Everyone, it's really struck just about everybody. They've given up a lot of homers. They went from the team that gave up the fewest through mid-June to the team that's giving up, I think, the most since that point. And I don't, like, it's a silly thing to say. They need to stop giving up homers. Right. Okay, how do you get there? It's part of the 40-game equation. How do they get to that team that was averaging, it was about like 1 homer per 9 for 2+ months of the season, to the team that's giving up almost like 1.7, 1.8 in the 2 months since?
I'm interested, Joel, in where this next guy, this other starting pitcher, falls into, whatever bucket he falls into in the last 40 games for you, and that's Carlos Rodon. He's going into the season. One of the biggest narratives was just how important he was, and that was even before the Cole injury. That got even bigger once Garrett Cole goes out, and now Carlos Rodon is your guy. That theory has proven to be very true this season, because in his first 14 starts, Rodon has a 2.93 ERA. The Yankees are 47-21, and his downfall coincides exactly with the Yankees' downfall. That first game, that second game against Boston, he has that start. He gives up 5 runs, and in those next 7 starts, he has the highest ERA in all of baseball, and the Yankees go 11-23. Now he's turned it around, and so is the Yankees. You point to that Sunday Night Baseball game against the Red Sox. That was started by Carlos Rodon. So you were talking about rediscovering Garrett Cole earlier. How important is rediscovering Carlos Rodon or keeping this version of Carlos Rodon for the Yankees come these last 40 games and into the playoffs?
Yeah, so I have a theory. I think I will talk about the theory here. I think I've written the theory a few times, and it's one of those ones that's easy to go. But the Yankees begin to fall apart. Their starting pitching is great through June 14th. I know the date. It's through June 14th. What happens on June 14th is the announcement that on June 19th, Cole is going to make his first start. In other words, like, they have now accomplished one of the keys to the season, which is, can they get from the beginning to whenever Cole gets there? And it feels like either there was so much energy in the pitching staff, the starting staff, used to get to that day, that there was an exhale, or there was an emotional or mental exhale, like, we've done our job in some way. And like, the entire rotation lets down starting at that point. I believe it actually happened. Now, it could be a crazy theory, but go look at everyone's numbers through June 14th, and then from June 15th for about the next 50 games. what that looks like. It almost feels like, hey, the marathon's over. And it's like, no, you're at like mile 14, dude. Marathon's not over. And I think, and now, Rodon has regenerated. Hill has regenerated. So question, can they keep going? I want to give Rodon 2 extreme credits. One, there's always been a question about his durability. He has taken the ball every turn, including the ones where he did not pitch well. And as we see, when, Clark Schmidt goes down, Cole isn't there, your next guy up's Will Warren, who you feel like, how do we feel about that kind of situation? Simply taking the ball over and over is been valuable.
That goes to the Nestor stuff earlier, too. He's a guy that's done that this season, too.
Who's that?
Nestor.
Yes, sir. And Stroman. The other guys have stayed healthy even when they pitch poorly, but Rodon's history is not great in the health department. Yeah. The second thing I want to give him, and I think even a little bit more of a check mark for, is it's never easy to get knocked down and get back up. I think it's harder in our town. It's why I had admiration for like Edwin Diaz. Like that first season was so bad, and he took it on, and then had he was great. And I admire the people who can, like Joey Gallo couldn't get up, Carl Pavano couldn't get up, Javier Vasquez couldn't get up, Ed Whitson historically couldn't get up. This is not the easiest, Sonny Gray. This is not the easiest place if you let it into your head because of the point we were talking about before. Ball 1 in the 9th inning, the crowd's going to start booing. Hey, man, it's the terms of engagement. You're here. Like, you got to learn to live with it because you're not going to, no matter how much you push against it and say, that's terrible, it's not changing. I think it's self-defeating for Yankee fans. My advice to Yankee fans would be don't do it. But what's the use? They'd tell me to shut the fuck up. I'll do whatever I want if I buy a ticket, and it's not going to change, regardless of it. But so I think you have to find a way to either block it out or channel it. And I will give Rodon credit is he had as bad a first year, like kind of on the field, and he had some off the field stuff, right, with the crowd and with Matt Blake, the pitching coach, and it could have turned into Ed Whitson. And he rededicated himself in the offseason. He clearly came in better shape in every way, mental, physical, and he's run the marathon better. Sorry for the marathon analogy again, but he's run it better this season, and he got knocked down this year. Like, it was easy to believe once he had that terrible kind of June-July bridge, well, all right, well, we've seen Carlos Rodon, nice parting gifts, and you move along. But he's gotten back up at a point where they've really needed him. And the theme of the show, Garrett Cole's getting the ball in game 1. We now have a game show going on. Who gets the ball in game 2? Like, all things being equal, where they could line it up. You're lucky if you could line it up. I think today, especially if they hit a lineup that has some key lefties in it, I think Rodon gets the ball. Yeah, he's I think we forget what a significant contract he was given, $162 million to be the co-star to Cole. And he's going to get that opportunity for whatever amount of season remains.
Joe, if we're going to do the who gets the ball in the playoffs thing, a question I guess that would come up for me is, like, Luis Gil would be a guy that his stuff would translate best out of the guys that you'd still think about. Is he getting the ball at the start or not? His stuff would translate best in the bullpen. And we talked about Clay Holmes and how they might need a late inning, a high leverage reliever. Luis Gil seems to be a guy that you could put in there and feel pretty good about giving him a high leverage spot. Or do you think, is that an option for the Yankees, or do they still have him as a starter?
So I think I'm not running away from the question as much as something we talk about a lot on the show is, like, there's a lot of distance from here to there.
Okay.
At this point, it's pretty clear to me that he's an important starter the rest of the way, unless you tell me any of the following happens. Stroman pitches so bad that they just can't. do it anymore. And that would have Clark Schmidt, or they're all pitching well, and then Clark Schmidt comes back also. And now you get to play the game of, should we keep Clark Schmidt in the bullpen? Like we've built him up as a starter, but he's pitched. By the way, he's pitched in the postseason as a reliever. He's more comfortable probably doing this. Or has Gil run out of gas? Because we still don't know what this looks like. We're at August. What does it look like the rest of August? What does it look like September? He might have to pitch October. Maybe he's fine. Clark Schmidt got through the season last year, and we all kept saying, when's he going to stop? When's he going to stop? And he got through it. And so, and Tommy, I would do this. I think your best starters have to start in the postseason. Okay. They still deal with more outs than anyone else. And right now, if everything stayed the same, and it's not going to, and this is why I don't even like to do it, but it's not going to. I think Cole, Rodon, and Hill get the ball. And then it's, does Schmidt get healthy? Does Stroman get right? Does Cortez get right? That's the game show for the fourth starter. But even the other ones, stuff is going to happen with Cole, Rodon, and Hill that's going to do it. It's just you need those guys. And then don't forget, once you get into a playoff series, you are playing a little bit of Legion ball, which is, if Hill starts game 2 and pitches well, and suddenly it's game 5 and you need someone out of the bullpen, he'll pitch out of the bullpen. It's all hands on, arms on deck once you get there.
That makes sense. That's fair. Just got to see how it pans out the rest of the 40 games.
Yeah. Yep. I think that's something we're going to be paying attention to and seeing how that situation develops. Tommy, thank you so much as always for Hoganalytics, man.
Of course.
Okay, Joel's notebook. I was told to remind you about a conversation you had with Miss Suzyn Waldman yesterday. What do you got for me, man?
So we're in the clubhouse yesterday. Suzyn and I are kind of Michael K was there yesterday. There's not a lot of people who are around from when we've been around. Michael K predates me. I replaced Michael K as the beat guy at the Post just for covering the Yankees. He left to go to the Daily News in '89, and I replaced him. So I believe Suzyn, if that wasn't her first year, maybe she was with the Yankees in '87, '88, but we're kind of all started, we were all in that area. So, I have a kinship with them that's different from everybody else. We've just been through it. And, we always, and I'm standing, I think we were waiting for Judge after the game. And Suzyn and I were joking around with a younger reporter, and we used to know the players so much better. Access used to be better. And Suzyn has a good sense of humor about the story, which is, and I forgot how we got there yesterday. This is the early onset, is we were talking about believing in someone. And I go, Suzyn, do you remember when you believed in Eric Plunk? And she started laughing. She actually then said, tell the story. So the Yankees traded Ricky Henderson to Oakland for Eric Plunk, Greg Cadaret, and Luis Polonia, right? A month later, Luis Polonia got arrested in Milwaukee for having sex with an underage girl. The Yankees decided that these two guys who were two of the pitch in the 6th inning guys were going to be starters because they had big arms. And early in the it could have been spring training in '90, or it's very early in the season, Eric Plunk, who had a big arm and actually had a long career as a reliever, but they're trying to start him, and he has a good game, moment, whatever. And Suzyn says to me, Eric Plunk is going to have a great year. And I said, Suzyn, don't move. And I wrote in my notebook, Eric, in big letters, Eric Plunk is going to have a great year. Suzyn Waldman, March 19th, 1990, or whenever it was, right? And Eric Plunk was terrible that year. And every time we were waiting for Eric Plunk after a game, I never gave up that notebook that season. I kept it no matter if I moved on to anyone. We'd wait, and I'd go like this to Suzyn, and I'd just show her the notebook. And I go, Suzyn, Eric Plunk is not a good major league starting pitcher. Never. And but you know what? It probably says a lot, big difference between us, and I mean, I love Suzyn, is I'm a cynic and Suzyn is an optimist. Right? And Suzyn sees the young player, what's possible.
Right.
And I see it in a different possibility, because Major League Baseball's hard. And it's always easy to be cynical because most people are going to fail. Like, it's so freaking hard. And then we might have told this Eric Plunk story here. So we then told the other Eric Plunk story, which was Mike Martinez was the Yankee beat guy for the New York Times. And so again, this would have been like it had to be early enough, like 90, no later than 91, because his assignment was to go up to all the players on the Yankees and find out which two cities they think should be the expansion cities that turn out to be Miami and Colorado, which I think start in 93, right? So they had to be put in place in 90 or 91. And, like Vancouver was up for it and the Carolina, like there were other places that were in play. So the way Mike was doing it would he'd go up to somebody like a player and say, hey, you're a member of the Major League Expansion Committee. Have I told this story?
Yeah.
I have told the story. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll tell it again just in case. Hopefully we have a line of new listeners. He goes up to players and says, you're a member of the Major League Expansion Committee. Which two places would you like? And so he went up to Eric Plunk and he goes, you're a member of the Major League Expansion Committee. And before he could say anything else, Eric Plunk goes, I'm a member of the Major League Expansion Committee? And I was like, no. Mike is like, no. Like, I'm setting up a hypothetical here. And I'm not sure he knew what hypothetical meant either. So it was as if like a letter had been sent to Eric Plunk in spring training. But because he was in spring training, he didn't know that he was on the Major League Expansion Committee. So, yeah. That we were telling like 30 plus year old stories yesterday, waiting for Aaron Judge going down memory lane. So I thought in my notebook this week, I thought I'd share that here. From the physical to the actual virtual of telling the notebook and what you wrote down is actually hilarious. It was like I go, she was in like Suzyn would be in a little side booth. And as Eric Plunk is going, walk Homer, I just go, because I'm not a nice person. I'd walk over to the booth. And I just have the notebook and I go. In the middle of her broadcasting? No. She's watching the game. Back then, I don't know if you remember, like FAN would do like updates like every 20 minutes or so. So she was in a little like place where she could do it, whatever. Like, we'd go, Suzyn Waldman at the ballpark, Eric Plunk has given up 2 homers or whatever. And so I obviously I wouldn't do it while she was on the air. But like there was another 19 minutes between each one of those to just go up to her and go, I wish, do you know something that's like one of those ones is got lost? I wish I had that notebook. Yeah, that would be cool if you had that. You could have shown that off here. Joel, thank you as always for going like talking all Yankees baseball. I mean, it's just, I'm hoping for a sweep against the White Sox this week, the worst team in baseball. It would be nice if we can get that this week. How about that? And, we'll go from there. We're going to talk to you again next week. Yeah, we'll talk next week. I do think like it's just a look ahead kind of thing. And I know it's hard in the moment when you're a Yankee fan. But to me, as not a Yankee fan, like when I was watching, I was at all 27 innings over the weekend. I am playing that game of what is being fixed, what still needs to be fixed. Because they could win. They could win, Ryan. Like, there is no great team this year, and they're one of the very good teams. And they have to clean up some stuff and get some guys healthy and get performance. And so much, it's just how I watch the game because I'm not invested in the win or the loss. And I wonder if it's valuable to tell Yankee fans, like where you kind of like living and dying with it a little. I get it. That's the great thing about being a fan. Hey, man, like part of it is think about the big picture here a little bit because they can win, right? I don't know if they'll be the favorite, co-favorite, one of the 3 or 4, but they can win. They have a lot wrong. Keep in mind, everybody has a lot wrong with them. And who does the best between now and then to clean up, to get guys healthy, to fix areas that are a problem is probably going to be the last team standing. No doubt, Joel. We're looking forward to seeing how it plays out. Thank you as always, man. All right, Ryan. All the best. You too.